I'm really happy to welcome Jessica Lam here, Head of Strategy at WeLab. We also have Blake Larson, Managing Director at Lalamove, and Esther Wong, Managing Director at Sensetime. So welcome everyone on main stage. And I wanted to start actually with a fun fact. So the term unicorn was created by Ellen Lee in 2013. And at this time, we only had about 39 unicorns over the world. Do you guys have an idea of how many unicorns, your club has as member? Any wild guess?
120?
More than 200, I would assume.
More than 200, Blake? Anything up?
Before or after COVID?
That's a very good one. So today we have 465 actually unicorns. So it's getting a very crowded club. So welcome everyone. Even though you are a billion-dollar company, could you please first, introduce more about yourself? And I will ask you for your 1-minute pitch. Jessica, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hi Karen, thanks for that. It's been a fabulous day so far. So I'm Jessica Lam, Group Head of Strategy here at WeLab. Since I'm not allowed to do my pitch, I won't say too much about it, but I've been in the fintech sector for about 3 years now. Very passionate about what we do here and want to do a lot more for the Hong Kong fintech and the startup scene, representing a homegrown Hong Kong startup here.
Esther.
Hi, so I'm Esther Wong, Managing Director of Sensetime Technology. Sensetime is Hong Kong and possibly Asia's largest AI platform company. So we have been very blessed by the fact that the capital market's been very kind to us. We are engaged in currently 10 different business verticals, and our business has been growing at triple digit since our inception a few years ago.
And last but not least, our gentleman here on the panel.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, my name is Blake Larson. I'm the Managing Director of Lalamove. I'm really focused on our global expansion right now. And for those of you who maybe haven't heard of us, we are a global technology company focused on local deliveries with a presence in over 250 cities, spanning mainland China, Southeast Asia, India, and South America.
Okay, and as you know, at Startup Impact Summit and at WHub, we are all about, passion. So could you please share more about actually, your vision and your mission, Esther?
The company was founded in 2015 by Professor Tang, is a professor at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And was founded on the mission that we would like to bring AI to democratize the use of AI, so everybody is able to have access to the most cutting-edge technology that's going to affect in every aspect of our lives.
That's actually quite inspiring. Blake, what about you?
Yeah, Lalamove was founded in 2013 here in Hong Kong with the mission of empowering our local communities to make delivery fast and simple. And really our vision is to become synonymous with delivery. So anytime anybody needs to send something, receive something, they think of Lalamove.
Short and crisp. Jessica.
So I'm going to add on to the 1-minute spiel. And so WeLab is a leading fintech in Asia. We're born in Hong Kong in 2013, it's the same year as Lalamove. We've been around for about 7 years. And it really started out with our founder, Simon Long, thinking about what can we do with traditional finance and banking financial services, and how can we use technology to make things a little bit more efficient and a little bit faster. But it's not just about speed and efficiency, it's about, I wouldn't say challenge the norm, but how come we can use fintech in the US and how come it hasn't been used in Hong Kong yet? So it's answering a bunch of questions and finding a different, but hopefully a better way. And so over the last 7 years, we've built a lot of technology. And ultimately, the goal is to improve people's lives. And we are always going to start off by improving people's financial lives. And how we do that is making financial services a little bit less scary. So we always say that what we want to do at the end of the day is bring a little bit of joy to your customer journey and your customer experience as it relates to financial services to begin with. So once that burden is off your back, hopefully everything else in life will just be that little bit happier. And that's all we want, just don't be freaked out, just be happy. It's actually not that scary. Financial services can be fun.
It's quite daring to want to bring joy into financial services, actually, when we think about it. So as you actually, all of you mentioned, you know, you are actually Hong Kong grown unicorns, right? So you started around like 2013, 2015. And can you let us know, you know, what are really the strengths of Hong Kong that really help you to grow as a unicorn?
Maybe I can
Please.
start. Sure. So it's the starting of Sensetime is quite unique. In fact, Sensetime was incubated in the multimedia lab in the Chinese University of Hong Kong. So we are very grateful for the academic environment in Hong Kong to be able to attract amazing talents from Hong Kong, from mainland to work with us. And then we've been able to use these talents and be able to actually commercialize our technology to form into a company. But a lot of it, the incubation time is always from Hong Kong, the Chinese university. So yes, to answer your questions, there is actually a tremendous amount of talents in Hong Kong that we're tapping into, and we aim to continue to tap into. Hong Kong is our home.
It is. Jessica, what can you tell us about Hong Kong?
I think I completely echo what Esther just said, which is Hong Kong is our home, right? We are born here, the founding team, the management team, our headquarters is in Hong Kong. We have vast operations across the border in China, where we service the mainland, as well as in Indonesia. You know, our headquarters our China headquarters are in Shenzhen. And right now we serve over 44 million customers and 300 enterprises. The beauty about that, actually, and I might be jumping the gun here, is where we're located and how Hong Kong is a perfect conduit and a perfect place for the global outreach, right? Not just China, not just Southeast Asia, but actually as we think more broadly going forward. I'm 100% in terms of talent. There is the willingness, there is the drive to do so. The biggest constraint in Hong Kong is the population, in the sense that there's a lot of talent, but you can only nurture so much talent when there's a finite number of people. And it's not because the market opportunity isn't great here in terms of size, so don't misquote me on that. It's genuinely in terms of when you've got a larger pool, then you can leverage some of that talent. Having said that, I think there's different areas of specialty. Hong Kong is great in terms of financial services. You can read the WHub white paper in terms of you know, why Hong Kong's ecosystem is flourishing as it relates to startups, as well as it relates to fintechs. There's a plenty of things. One is physical location, one is education, one is you know, the strength of the financial services sector in the fintech side. So there are actually a lot of strengths that make sense. And I think the biggest advantage for us is we are from Hong Kong. You know, the team is actually a bunch of Hong Kongers who have spent time overseas and are very familiar with the different markets in Southeast Asia and the mainland and in the US and Australia. But we've come back and tried to build something in our home country to put it all together.
Blake?
Yeah, I think I'll try to take it back to the early days and the experience of, you know, reflecting back and what made Hong Kong a great place for us to start, because maybe you don't know necessarily at the beginning, you just start where you are. And then only in retrospect, you actually understand, you know, what really drove you and what Hong Kong kind of aided in your journey. So I think for us, and I think most startups, there's a sentiment of resiliency and grit in Hong Kong. It's a big dynamic city. It's quite cutthroat in a lot of industries. And when you're doing a startup, you have to be naive and believe in the future and what can be bigger than where you're at, but you have to kind of get through those first milestones, those first hurdles. And Hong Kong definitely presents those first hurdles. As you know, Jessica was saying, it's not the biggest market in the world, but it's big enough to prove your product market fit. You know, it's 8 million people. It's enough to know if you've got something worth taking elsewhere, and then you can leverage the region. I mean, I think it's something like, you know, almost half the world's population is within like a 5-hour plane ride from here. So there's a density and a momentum in this general region, but you don't need that at the beginning. You just need to get through your first city and prove that you can work. So I think that's one thing that Hong Kong offers, is that, you know, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, is kind of our belief, because it's expensive. Maybe there isn't as much talent as other places are known for, and all these other reasons. So if you can make it work here, you're going to do fine elsewhere. So I think that builds it into your mentality. And then secondly, for us, in playing in the online and the offline space kind of together, it's hard to find a city more efficient than Hong Kong. So it kind of leverages the first point is the solution that you come up with here, you can't just be like marginally better. You can't go from something that was just, a 50-year-old product, and then you have something that's kind of up to date, a website that kind of works or whatever this, because Hong Kong is so efficient. I mean, you can get anything you need within 5 minutes in Hong Kong. And this is one of the beauties of the city. So when you're thinking about it from a startup and a technology standpoint, your solution has to be really solid. And so it really teaches you to focus on efficiency, whether that's the cost side, the product side, et cetera. And I think these are things that may seem as a challenge, but actually from a startup standpoint, over the long term, you really realize that Hong Kong provides these as a competitive advantage when you go to the other markets.
It's definitely a fast-paced city, and you guys have been scaling and growing so fast, and that leads actually to some challenges. So how do you keep, delivering great customer experience at scale? Blake, I'll start with you, but I remember when you first joined our job fair like 5 years ago with such a small team. How do you manage to grow so fast and keeping actually this same level of customer experience?
Yeah, I think this is really hard because typically with speed, you either have to spend more to keep up the quality or grow faster, but the quality suffers. So I think one thing that we've really done on this front is we try to keep it pretty simple. So even though the company has gotten a lot bigger and we're across several markets globally, it adds a lot of complexity. So how you kind of get through that complexity is keeping things simple. So as a company, our values are the same since the beginning. So we hire consistently, we look for the same types of people, and then that kind of spreads our culture internally as we grow, which helps maintains the customer experience because you get the same quality of people as you get bigger. And I think the second part of that really is keeping our priorities list very, very short. We have more money and more funding than we ever have. But at the same time, our priority list, there could be 1,000 things on it, but we just focus on 2 or 3 and being excellent at those. Because people and customers typically forget the things that you're not excellent at if you really deliver your core value proposition to an extent that they can't find elsewhere. So this is a way that we maintain the quality as we really go and scale globally.
So I would say really stay focused. What about you, Jessica? You have millions of customers and you've grown like so fast and actually diversifying also your business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly not an easy feat. I agree with, one thing that's extremely important for us is when we move to a new market is don't be presumptuous to assume that one model that works in market A will work in market B. There's a substantial amount of customization and localization for a different market, as well as a respect for the customers. So I think it comes back to a little bit of a cliche, but listen to your customers in terms of what they want. Although I must say that most of the entrepreneurs actually succeed because they were a little bit daring and provided something that the customer didn't know they wanted. Take, for example, an iPhone, right? When the first iPhone came out, everyone was like, what on earth is that? Who's going to adopt that? And now I don't know how we would ever live without it. So I think there's a little bit of a balance in terms of being extremely creative and entrepreneurial, but also listening to the customers. And why we say that is we started in Hong Kong, then we scaled into the mainland and then into Indonesia. In every market, one thing that's very, very consistent is actually the culture and how we sort of address different things. What is different, obviously, is the taste and the preferences and the customization in terms of how we deliver that outcome. And now that we have over 800 employees, across the world, what we've done is really, we've learned that word of mouth sometimes is great, but that's not scalable and it's not efficient. So what we did was we put together a culture book. We actually codified and wrote it down. It's not a law, it's like a reference guide for people who are a little bit curious. So we always say there's actually, 3 groups who would be interested in our culture book. Our existing employees who actually want to know a little bit more history, have heard us talk about it, but actually want to read it for themselves. The second group are what we call, the people who are curious souls and want to find out more about WeLab, whether they're job seekers or people in the industry and want to learn a little bit about the model. And the third group is really just interested parties who are business partners and want to get to know us better, right? And then once you understand the ethos and the thinking behind what we do things, then there's a reason for the madness of what we do. It's not irrational. It actually is, as Karen always says, it's always done with a lot of passion, but there's also logic behind it. So I think for that, it really comes down to a lot of communication, but there's also the latitude of being able to express your views. And in our culture book, we lay it out, you know, everyone has a voice. We always say something along the lines of, it's never not my job, right? So we're always here to collaborate and help each other out. We always have a vision of saying, let's do things 10 times better, right? If you're just gonna be complacent and stick to the way you're doing it, you're not really gonna press those boundaries a little bit, and you're not gonna have the next iPhone. So always open-minded to do that. And for anyone who's curious, who's watching this, and you wanna know more about this culture book, just go onto our website. We posted it up there, you know, WeLab.co, and you just search culture book. It's there, it's for your consumption. You know, let us know what you think, because that's how we continue to improve. And we were inspired by the Zappos of the world, right? The Amazons of the world. You know, we didn't create it, but we've customized and personalized it. And that's exactly what you do when you expand into new markets. I don't think we've got it 100% right now, but we're trying our best. And that's why we welcome the feedback, because as you scale, you're always going to see new issues, that things you've never ever thought about. When you're all in a room of 20, it's easy. When you've got multiple offices, it gets hard. Then you've got different cultures, time zones, you name it. You know, it just gets very, very complex. So, you know, let's keep working at it, but that's where we are right now.
And I have to admit, I love the quotes at your office, including the one, you know, not my job, you know, which is definitely not an answer. And I truly recommend everyone actually to have a look at the culture book that I've read as well. And that is really, really interesting. And it actually takes a lot of time to put all this thing together. So it's good that you managed to share it with all of us. So Esther, you're more like a 2B companies. And actually I've read, but maybe my numbers are wrong, but you have over like 200 PhDs, you know, in Sensetime. Okay, how do you manage to be so efficient with so many like PhD and such a big like research lab, and to continue to innovate and develop like so many patents?
Okay, well, thank you so much. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, Karina. I think our company differs from Jessica's and Blake's company in such that our customers, we actually 2B companies. We deal with businesses. And as I mentioned, we actually have 10 different divisions, 10 different verticals. And I think one of the reasons that the company has been growing so well is because we actually stay quite humble, and we always listen to our customer. This is always true, whether you're a 2B or 2C company. So just backtrack a little bit. So to do AI well, in our case, it's computer vision. There is 4 very important elements, okay? You need a lot of data. You need a lot of good algorithm. And algorithm essentially is the people behind it. So you need very smart people. Number 3, you need some very good hardware, because the data needs something to run on the algorithm. And number 4, and very importantly, we actually need a very good feedback loop. We need to have a use case so they can keep telling us, you know, how should we tune our algorithm, for instance. So you see that Sensetime actually thrive in all of them. I would say that, but we are doing good in all of them, but one part that we are really proud of is actually the second part, the algorithm, the people behind it. I don't know if you guys know it, but we are actually the first company in the world, not just in Hong Kong, Asia, but in the world, who actually use computer vision to surpass humans' eyes accuracy when it comes to facial recognition. So I've told this story many times, but one thing that really strikes a chord with me and my friends in the audience is that when Sensetime achieved that, when Sensetime made that achievement, we actually beat Google and Facebook in the same world stage. And you can imagine that in terms of data, at that time, Sensetime was still a startup. So when it comes to faces, we have to download faces from Baidu and from Google on movie star space. Versus Facebook, you can imagine they have literally over 100 million faces to use, right? So what still make us win that competition really is the people behind it. So that's how much better our algorithm has to be. So we are very proud of ourselves that we always call ourselves, that we have a talent for black hole. We always attract the best and the smartest people in the team to join us and to stay with us. And obviously, to keep all these smart people in place, you cannot just keep them by just pure financial incentive, because to be honest, I mean, maybe any one of our PhD can come out and do a startup and can do relatively well, right? So the trick is, how do you keep all these people together? And I think it's very important that we actually have a very collaborative culture. The culture is what, and we have a shared culture and a shared mission to do things well, and to build something that we believe that is going to benefit now and the future generations. And this is something that we care a lot. Maybe a little bit similar to what Jessica is saying, that if the company has to have a common goal to link people together. The PhD, the mission of the company is AI for better humanity for all, right? So that's that. And also for us to get to attract a PhD, we can also have a very good culture independently, because we actually publish more computer vision related papers than Facebook and Google. We are #1 last year, as a matter of fact. So the PhDs in our company, they have their own autonomy to do what they really want to do. We don't give them a lot of hard-code KPI, but we give a more inspiring OKR, for instance, these kind of guidelines. And we give them a lot of freedom. In the meantime, we also give them a lot of support, because we have a research team, we also have an engineering team, and we have a sales team. So those three teams work very collaboratively together. The engineering team is the one who actually transform our product, our idea into the actual product, so the sales team can sell. So these three teams function very cohesively within Sensetime. And we all share.
So definitely take care of your team, right? I mean, I think what we've heard is really like the team is key. And one point also that you tackle, and Jessica, you know, I would like to hear your thought about it, is that, you know, we're talking about AI and we're talking also about data. So one thing, you know, I think that everybody is concerned is about data privacy. And you guys are WeLab, you know, are famous for your credit scoring algorithm that is using data. So what do you do with it, and how do you protect actually also the customer?
Yeah, I think it starts off with a couple of things, right? First of all is, you know, what data can you get? When you get the data, what do you do with it? You know, how to use it? And then afterwards, how do you store it, right? I think those are always a couple of things that customers or individuals are very concerned about. You know, obviously for us, we're very much a data-driven business. I think we all are, right? This is what we do as innovators and technology companies. It's about how do you make use of the data in such a way that it's valuable. You know, one area that we've been very focused on over the last, I guess, 12 months is an area called privacy computing, which is everything as it relates to data storage, data handling, how do you use the data appropriately, etc. And you know, one such thing as we talk about sometimes is how do you nip it in the bud, so that first of all, do I necessarily need to extract all this data, or do I just take the data that I need? And once I have the data, what do I do with it? So one example, I guess we've shared a couple of times is edge computing. Edge computing is not a new technology. It's pretty well known in autonomous driving, right? So what happens is, if you're an autonomous vehicle, you sense what's on the road. If there's an impediment, it tells you to swerve, right? And why that's good is because there's no latency between when the camera in the car sees that dog there, and then they will swerve away so that the dog doesn't get knocked over. That is effectively edge computing, because what's happening is, rather than the camera transmitting the information back up to the satellite to work out whether there's a dog, it's actually processed, you know, on the edge, which is on the device. We're using very much similar technology as it relates to credit scoring when we think about mobile applications. This is something that we've patented for our technology in China right now. And the beauty about that is that for me to achieve your credit score, I can actually do it on your device without having to pull 100 pieces of information out, fiddle through it, work out what I want, send it somewhere, which might get lost and hacked. And actually, so what that means is I'm actually protecting my client, because the customer I've actually already done the computation on device, and I'm only taking out the output, which is yes or no, without 100,000 bells and whistles. So I think edge computing is just one of many examples in terms of how we look at data privacy and the importance behind that particular function. And I think a lot of it comes down to education and sharing this with customers. It's not about showing off, it's about giving them comfort that we know what we're doing. And one thing I will share is we're building a virtual bank in Hong Kong right now, WeLab Bank. And I think one misnomer a lot of customers have in Hong Kong is that virtual banks aren't as safe as physical banks because everything is done online. You know, I think a lot of it comes down to education and customer confidence to tell them, explain why are we more secure. And I'll just give one really quick example, which is if you walk into a bank today and you know, often they tell you to fill in a form, right? So what you do is you go in a bank, you fill in a form, the form goes to the teller takes it back, someone processes it by scanning it or someone types it in. And then it goes into a system, into the bank's processing system. If you think about it from a mobile phone or an electronic device, all of this is done online. So immediately you cut out all of that physical process and you go straight into the back-end processing. If you think about it from a systems perspective, it is actually no different from a physical bank, a traditional bank, except that you are actually even safer because you've cut out a lot of the front steps of the potential human error, something getting lost, the time delay, etc. Now, what's super important behind the scenes is all of us, all three of us, are using modern technology built for 2020 and beyond. There's no legacy. Hopefully the systems talk to each other and they're done in a very, very efficient way. So I think sometimes it comes down to a lot of education and explanation, communication with the general public in terms of let's not worry about what we don't know out there in terms of data privacy and concerns. And actually, let's learn a little bit more, and hopefully this will give the audience a little bit more comfort in terms of why we think it's extremely important.
Yeah, I agree. And education is key, and knowledge is power. That's why it's really interesting also to learn what is inside this kind of black box, right? And technology is key for everything you're doing. So Blake, can you tell us more, maybe, you know, about the technology actually that you're using that enable you to grow so fast over not only Hong Kong, but Asia, India, and I believe also South America?
Yes, yeah. We just opened Brazil and Mexico last year, and we're actually going to be opening the US here in the next 2 months. So truly a global company at this point. Technology and what it means to our business is pretty much everything. It's the center part of what we do. It's the part that allows us to adapt to these new markets, to scale. We're an asset-light model, so it all becomes about efficiency in what we do. In logistics, it ends up being a game of unit economics. If you're not price competitive, you can't even be in the industry. And so we're really using technology as the backbone, as an enabler. It's not the end all be all, right? A customer, you can't just go and say, I have better technology, and they're going to come to you and, you know, oh, that's great. You know, give me more apps, give me more, you know, websites, more portals to go to. They don't think like this. They say, how do you make my life easier? So the technology almost needs to be the invisible part of the experience, the seamless part of their experience, that it actually makes their lives easier. So taking it from, you know, the complexity that our engineers have to go through to navigate maybe different data privacy policies by markets, configurations, even when we do, imagine like translations, right? When you change one thing in your app, you have to do this across however many markets and how many languages, and then still have all this presented to your customer in a way that like you almost don't want them to notice the changes, right? You just want it to make their life easier. So technology for us, I mean, it touches everything from payments to how we distribute the orders, to how we route the orders, to, you know, how we measure the quality of the service, on and on and on. So there's so many different layers there, but I think the important thing for us is really like, what is our customer experiencing? Is our driver making more money for every hour that they drive? And then if we can do these things, the technology takes the back seat and it becomes the enabler, though it becomes the thing that we can leverage the most to actually, you know, extend our impact globally.
And actually, you know, where we're talking about technology and scaling fast, and you were talking about payment, but this thing is that Asia and the world is quite fragmented, right? Regulatory frameworks, and even in terms of payment system from one country to another. So actually, how did you manage to reconcile this fragmentation in terms of scaling? So Blake, do you want to pursue on this one?
Well, I would say it's a challenge we're actually always navigating. There's no one provider, there's no one perfect solution. Everybody wants to go digital, but you'd be surprised to know that like 80 to 85% of our transactions are still done in cash, outside of mainland. Yeah, in mainland, it's like all WeChat and Alipay and such, but Southeast Asia is still very, very cash heavy. But obviously there's costs of doing, the cost of doing your business actually go up when you have cash, right? The flows of it, how do you get paid? How does your driver get paid? Your merchant ensure that like the good got delivered, on and on and on. So we work with numerous different providers across different markets. Some want credit cards, some want debit cards, some want bank transfers, some want e-wallet. It's not an easy challenge. So yes, again, we end up really working with local providers, ideally regional ones that at least have scale to make sure that the cost structure makes sense. But yes, there's a long way to going to making the payment enablement really easy for companies that are using it, and then consequently for the customers to make sure that you have every available option in front of them. It's not an easy process.
And Esther, AI is also touched by regulation, definitely, especially, in China, outside of China. What's your view on it? And how do you deal with it in order to provide the same type of services everywhere around the world?
Thanks, Kirin. This is a very good question because privacy is obviously a very big concern, and we do believe that this is a very healthy debate, and we invite this kind of debate. But first and foremost, I would like to tell you that actually, as a matter of fact, we as a company, we do not have access to your information. We have access to use the information, but we actually do not keep your information. So I hope I can clarify that a little bit. So sometimes people come to me and say, oh my goodness, you guys have all my facial data. No, that's not the case. I don't know you as a specific person. I don't have your facial data, but we have access to the data so that AI can do its algorithm and produce a result, a search result, for instance. So that's to clarify, number one. Number two, everywhere we operate, we actually work very closely with the regulators and also with key opinion leaders and local business leaders to figure a solution that actually works for every different region that we operate. So far, most of our business is China-centric, but we do have 10% of our business coming from overseas, including likes of Southeast Asia, Japan, Middle East, for instance. And we do work with the government very closely on that. So we do respect the local regulations.
And Jessica, it's actually quite impressive what you guys have built, in terms of lending, but now you actually have, a banking license. And as you said before, but I'm going to emphasize this, it's, the same license, the same requirement, compliance, and everything, that have to comply like every other big bank. So you're actually, building a bank, and that's quite impressive because usually it's businesses that have been there for like 100 years. So can you, explain to us a little bit more about your journey there?
Sure. I mean, actually, it's been so one thing you asked me earlier on is like, what have you done in the last year? So we bought a shirt. So we have a shirt that's got our new logo on it that says WeLab Bank. So that's one improvement I've done over the year, and I was very inspired by Blake and Karen, so I figured I should show some swag today. So in addition to getting a shirt and putting a logo together, yeah, we got a banking license and we built a bank. We're currently in our pilot launch, so the app and the bank is up and running. It will be available to the public very, very soon, so everyone watch this space. It's very interesting because we've been up and running for 7 years, right, as WeLab, as a group with our operations in the 3 markets I talked about. But over the last year, what we've done is we've built a startup within a startup, or a startup within a growth stage company. So it's actually in a way, taking us back to our roots in terms of rebuilding a company, and you've grown up, but you need to sort of refine that passion, I guess, we had as a startup, right, in terms of putting everything together. Now we're a little bit less scrappy compared to where we were 7 years ago when we really had nothing. But at the same time, there's an element of scrappiness, right, in terms of trying to do more with less, and also being extremely creative and challenging ourselves a little bit there. So the journey's been extremely fun. So obviously operating a bank, the bar is a lot higher than operating a business out of my own garage, let's put it that way. There's regulations, there's a regulator, there's a lot of standards that you need to comply with. We're very fortunate that we found very like-minded, legal and compliance team members who are our business partners rather than, the ones who say no to everything. And I think it comes down to finding the right team with the right mindset, but also having the right knowledge base. Because knowledge is extremely important. To run a regulated financial institution, you need to have the knowledge. I don't think Karen and I, without the knowledge, could just do that, right? We actually need real experts on board. So the senior management team is a little bit older because they do need to have the requisite 20-odd, 30 years of experience. But we've been lucky because we found the right ones who have that experience, but also have that frame of mind, who are willing to think of things in a slightly outside of the box way. Because if we were just building a virtual bank without branches in the exact same way as what an incumbent is out there, then we aren't really doing anything different at all, right? It's not just about, it's about how the product is delivered. What does the product actually look like? How does it feel in the hands of the customer? So the experience has been extremely, how should I say, rewarding. But at the same time, once again, as a startup, it's extremely painful. There's a lot of testing, there's a lot of failure, there's a lot of, how should I say it, talking to customers about what they like and they don't like. And one thing is, you're never going to please everyone. There are always going to be people who like things. But keep trying. And we always say one thing, which is, if you're going to fail fast. Test it, it doesn't work, pivot. So one of our biggest strengths, I think, what we see is that we're reasonably agile. And if it doesn't work out, we can pivot and move very, very quickly to do something else. And that's aided by the people, and it's aided by technology. So we're very, very fortunate, and we're really excited to be able to roll this out to you very, very soon.
So yeah, talking about agility, it's been quite an unusual year, and we are only at the middle of the year. So I want to keep it very optimistic, and I would like to ask you, what is the one thing out of everything that has happened for the past 6 months that you managed to take it as something positive for your business? Okay, so despite like all this type of crisis. So Blake.
Well, I think we're pretty lucky in this sense to be operating in a space that's really become fundamental to making the cities keep moving, the economic activity, keep the engine going despite, different types of lockdowns or restrictions or all of this. And we're seeing a huge change in behavior of people. You're seeing a lot of the late adopters to technology or the idea of online services really pivoting and trying, because they're forced to. Try something new. So in the delivery space, all of these mom and pop small stores that are core customer base in a lot of ways, but were resistant to technology, are being forced into say, how do I keep the income coming in? How do I make a living? And how do I deliver that now, right? I didn't have a web store, I didn't have an online store, but I have to deliver, otherwise my business goes under. So we've actually seen roughly 400% increase since pre-COVID to first-time users and website traffic. So this is something like on the optimistic side, from a technology perspective, you're seeing people being open to new ideas. And it's probably not exclusive to logistics or delivery in any way, but the world is forcing people to maybe change their mindset and be open to new alternatives and different ways of living. And there will be a lot of companies, maybe not in the very short term, but will really benefit from let's call it a global shift. I don't want to say a cultural shift, because I think it is global in different ways of how people are willing to interact, transact, and go about their daily lives. And that's only because they had no choice. And so anybody being more open-minded, I think, is a good thing for most businesses.
Esther?
Yeah, I would echo what Blake said. I think that transformation is already happening, but the fact that there is COVID actually accelerate a lot of these behavioral changes. And in our case, one of our businesses is actually just to, we actually have a product that can detect temperature, so that it's being widely used in city airports, and we can do contact tracing and detect temperature changes. So using major airports actually in China and around the world. Also we are being deployed in 5 different metro subway systems in China. So when you go to the subway in some of the cities, you just use your face, right? If you have a cold, the gate will not open, just to keep everybody safe. So these changes probably would have happened regardless, but because of COVID, now that it's been accelerated. And we are also very glad that, especially I'm particularly happy with the school. In fact, we work with a lot of schools, and now that the school is opening up, especially in preparation of September. So there will be a lot of these safety device that's in place, and that is made by our product, made by Sensetime. So I believe that overall, this is going to be a pace in the right direction. Yes.
Thank you, Esther. And Jessica.
So I know I'll just wrap it up really quickly. I think the ultimate message is everyone is getting comfortable being uncomfortable, or getting as uncomfortable as they are being comfortable. And this is one of the values we have in our culture book. Everyone is trying things, willing to try technology, willing to try things online, willing to join a virtual conference like this, and looking at the setup. That in itself is something that everyone is also being more open-minded to. So I think we're taking baby steps here, but definitely heading in the right direction. And what you'll find out later is that, hey, I never tried this before, but actually it may be a better way, or it may be a good alternative for certain situations, but not for everything. So I think this is the start of potentially a hybrid model to come. Very, very, in a way, finding the opportunity in a not so pleasant situation. I think that's something to look forward to.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think it's been really, really interesting. To recap, I think we put a lot of emphasis on the team and the culture, and that's something that we have heard a lot actually throughout the day, so that's super interesting. I would like really to thank you all. I'm so happy to have been hosting this unicorn panel, once again this year. And Walter, I'll let the mic to you now.
Great, Karina, thank you very much. And thanks again to our panelists, Blake, Jessica, and Esther. That was a really fascinating conversation on the future of payment. And I'm going to be blinking my eyes and hopefully paying for drinks all around this evening. So for those of you who are here on the main stage, I would say the party's only just getting started. We are going on for another 4 hours. And coming up in 15 minutes, shout out to my 16-year-old, we're going to have a talk about the future of gaming. I know that we just immediately captured the youth market there. Please, we're going to take a very short break of about 15 minutes, and then we'll be back at 5 p.m. Hong Kong time for a panel on the future of gaming. And to everyone who's been joining us during the day, thank you so much. And to our most recent panel, thanks as well. And we'll see you online in a little bit. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.